Dear learners, I welcome everyone to this TC session on the topic survey research. Any scholar or any learner who is doing their research work can make benefit of this topic, the survey research. In this session, I will be talking about what is survey research, the different types of survey research or survey designs, then some of the major characteristics which you will see in survey research, and towards the end of the session I will be talking about the steps that you will be following when you are undertaking a survey research. So with this introductory remark, let me start this session. As I said, we will see first what a research is about, why do we undertake a research, and the major steps which are involved in a research. Now, as everyone knows, a research is something where we scientifically follow some steps and processes which would help us finally to come out with a solution to a problem which usually we call it as a research problem, or it can also lead to like developing a new theoretical knowledge, etc. Now, when we talk about the research, you will see there has to have some steps. As I said, this has to be scientifically organized, and this is how we usually do the research. So I would request your attention on the screen where you are seeing the processes involved in the research. Like, first you will identify the research problem, or sometimes we call it as a research variable. Then we will review the various studies which are related to a research work. Now then we will move on to identifying the purpose, research questions, research variables, etc. We will also see with regard to the research problem or the variable which we have found out, now how we will go about finding a solution to that problem. So here comes the relevance of research designs or the types of research. So that is going to be the third step. Then once you have finalized all this, then you will go for collecting the data, then you will analyze the data which you have collected, and finally you will prepare the research report where you will mention, you will note down all the work that you have completed in that particular research. So these are the steps which usually we go through when we undertake a research work. Now, when we were discussing about the steps, at one point in the third step I was pointing about the research design or the types of research which you will select. So there comes the relevance of different research designs. Sometimes we also call it as the methodology of the research work. Like, we can also call it like the type of research which you will be undertaking in that particular research work. So if you look at the different types of research, one research which you will find is the survey research or the survey design. So let us go through a very simple definition of this survey research, as Creswell pointing out, and it says, yes, this is like the survey research is a set of research procedures in which the investigators or the investigators administer a survey to a sample or to the entire population of people to describe the attitudes, opinions, behaviors or characteristics of the population. So it's very simple. Like, now the researcher will administer a survey to the sample which is selected in the study. Now, why it is done? This would help us to understand their opinion, beliefs, attitudes, their trends, etc. So in a nutshell, we can say this is about finding the status of any particular thing. It can be anything like the status of the students about their academic achievement. It can be their beliefs about using technology in the teaching learning processes. It can be about teachers' belief towards the learning activities of the students. It can be anything that way. So basically the researcher will administer, he will give a survey to the sample which is going to be there in that particular research work. So this is the simplest definition which we can quote for the survey research. Now when we discuss about the survey research and its definition, we have already seen like it is about identifying the the attitudes, belief, opinions of the samples which are there in our research work. Now if that is the case, let us also see when this research work is conducted. Like as you see in the slide, this is an extension of the the definition which I was discussing. Now why we do, when it is done, if you want to analyze the trends, like say for example the academic achievement of the students, it can be also done to evaluate a study, a program, like many programs, many universities, colleges offer. So if you want to evaluate that program or study, we can undertake a research, survey research. This would also help us to understand the individual's attitudes, belief, opinions, etc. This would also help us to describe the entire characteristics of a population, and it can be anything. Say for example, if you are working on a research work which is related to the 10th class students, so it will help you to understand the characteristics of that population, and there is no limit to that, it can be anything. It would also help us to identify the practices. Say for example, there can have many universities, institutions, colleges who follow certain best practices in the teaching learning process. It can be in offering the programs, and it can be anything like that. So this would also help us to understand such best practices. This would also help us to follow up on individuals over time. Now when we come to the types of survey research designs, you will see we will study the individuals also at some time. Now it can be done in different ways. Maybe you can collect the data relating to that population or sample maybe within in 10 to 15 days. So it can be done in 1 year also. It can be done in 2-3 years also. So it would help us to understand that population over a period of time. So these are some of the situations where the survey research, survey designs are used. And now let us move on to some of the specific applications. Like when we talk about the discipline of education, as you see on the slide, some of the objectives of survey research in the discipline of education, like say for example, one, to describe the educational phenomena. As you see on the slide, student engagement in the teaching learning process, how it is at present, what is the status of students' engagement. Identify the trends, as I said, like say for example in online learning adoption, how the universities or colleges or some maybe special institutions adopt, or how they use the online teaching learning activities. So in order to understand the trend also we can use. The third is understand, as I have been pointing out since the beginning, it would also help us to understand the beliefs, their attitude towards any particular teaching learning activity, the use of technology. It can be attitude towards the teachers, teaching behavior, and it can be anything like that. So this would also help us to understand such beliefs, attitudes, the opinion. And it is not only limited to the students, it can be done on the teachers also. It can be done on other stakeholders, like maybe the school managers, university administrators, and there can have various such stakeholders in the education system. So this would also help us to, like the survey designs, survey research would also help us to understand such beliefs and attitudes. As I said, again, it would help us to understand and evaluate the educational programs, courses which are offered in various educational institutions. Now, this would also help us to assess the needs of the students. Say, for example, if you want to implement a new program, whether there is any need for such a program. Now, if you want to, include any new teaching, what we say, like technologies, the artificial intelligence, is there a need for, integrating such technologies in the teaching learning process? So, this would also help us to understand such needs. Then follow up on educational outcomes over a period of time. As I said, this would help us to understand these students better, maybe how they are performing over a period of time. So if you are talking about specifically the discipline of education, these are some of the areas which we can use for taking up survey studies. I suppose you understood these the points which I have covered till now. Now let us move on to the different types of what we say the survey designs or survey research. Now, when we talk about the different survey designs or survey researches, it is classified into basically two, as you see on this slide. One, the cross-sectional survey design. The second is longitudinal survey design. Now, what is the difference? It's very simple, as you see on the slide. In cross-sectional design survey research, we will collect the data at one point of time. But in the longitudinal studies, we will collect data over a period of time, maybe for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, it can be anything like that. Survey, maybe 10 to 15 days, 1 month, 2 month time. So it is going to be very limited in time, the time which is used for collecting the data. So these are the types of survey research designs, survey designs. Now let us go a little more into it. Like if you talk about the cross-sectional designs, what are the different types of cross-sectional designs? Like as you see on this slide, examine current attitudes, beliefs, opinions or practices, as I said, and as I have been talking about, it helps us to understand students' beliefs, teachers' attitudes. It can be anything, the different stockholders' opinion on students' behavior, students' learning outcomes, etc. It can also help us to compare two or more educational groups. Say, for example, in the discipline of education, sometimes we compare the students' learning outcomes with the girls' students' learning outcomes, or students coming from rural background compared with the urban background. So it can also help us to, survey studies can also help us to compare different variables belonging to different subgroups. So this is also one. The next is again as measure community needs of educational services as they relate to the programs, courses, and it can be anything like that, school facilities, etc. The needs of the students and different stakeholders. The next is evaluate a program. As I said, different programs offered by different universities, colleges and institutions. Now let us also see their effectiveness maybe, and how we will do that by evaluating those programs on various parameters. So that is also there. This is also one of the types of cross-sectional survey design. The next is large-scale assessment of students or teachers, such as statewide study or a national survey involving thousands of participants. And various stakeholders, various institutions, organizations in our country undertake such research work, which includes the entire country. It can be sometimes limited to, different states also. So this is going to be a very large-scale study. So these are some of the types of cross-sectional studies or cross-sectional designs. Now let us move on to the next, like the longitudinal study. As I said, in longitudinal study, what we do, we collect the data over a period of time. So the time period in which the data collected is going to be little higher compared to the cross-sectional studies. And if you talk about the the longitudinal survey designs, you will see three major types, as Creswell pointing out: trend studies, cohort studies and panel studies. And what is this trend study? As you see in this slide, in trend studies, see, a population will be studied for over a period of time, while in cohort study you will not study the entire population, but you will select a subset of the population, and that subset of the population, which we call the cohort, will be studied over a period of time. Say for example, like if your population is going to be the entire 10th class students from Delhi. Now it is going to be difficult for a researcher to study each and every individual in the entire population. So what we will do, we will select only a group of people from that particular population, and only those population will be studied. Say for example, some students from the south district of the Delhi, only that population will be studied over a period of time. The next is the panel study. In panel study, changes in the same people over the time. Now, say for example, you are undertaking a study who were the students of maybe in 2023. Now in 2024 they will be promoting, they will be going to the next higher class. So the same population which you have selected in 2023 will be selected in 2024 also. The same sample you will be studying in 2025 also. So see, we are studying a group of people, samples over a 3-year period in 2023, 2024 and 2025. So if that is the kind of design if you are using, that is what we call the panel survey design, panel longitudinal design. So with this I think I would wind up the discussion on the types of research designs which comes both in what we say the cross-sectional and longitudinal studies. Now let us move on to the characteristics of survey research. Now when we talk about the characteristics of survey research, as you see on the slide, a couple of things, like see, in survey research we will be working on the variables which we have selected for the study or the research problem. Now what happens, like in survey study, one idea is you will be selecting a sample from a population, that is one. You will collect data through maybe questionnaires or interviews, the popularly used. The next is you will design the instrument which you are going to use in your study. Instrument or the tool. Tool is the most accurate, appropriate term in case of social science research. And last one is response rate also, because survey, as you see, it is going to be conducted on a big samples. The number of samples, as much as it goes high, you will get more reliable results. So more reliable and valid results. So these, as you see on the slide, these are the major characters which is not, you will not be seeing sometimes this in some other studies, but some of the characteristics which you are seeing on the slide, it is also seen in other types of designs, other types of research. So let us see this. Like if you are talking about, we will little go deep into these characteristics, not in a big way but in a lighter way. Population, so that was the first characteristic. You will have a population which includes all the participants of your study. Now as I said, you cannot select the entire population for your research work. So what you will do, you will identify a target population which we sometimes call the sampling frame also. Say for example, Delhi, the entire population, you will select only the South Delhi students who are in the 10th class, say for example. So that is going to be your target population. Now in target population also, you will not be sometimes selecting you will not be studying the entire participants in that target population in the sampling frame. So what you will do, you will select only a few participants from that target population, and that group is what we call the sample. So sample is actually the participants you are selecting for the study or collecting data from, or the participants whom you are collecting data. So this is about the population, target population and samples. Now, the next is about the tools which you are going to use, or the instruments. What are those instruments? Majorly the questionnaire or the interview. And if you are using the questionnaire, it can be done in different ways. The major ones, like you can create the questionnaire, then mail it to the participants, let them fill, and you can collect it back. Otherwise, you can use the online mode. You can use any online technology for that. Coming to the interviewing, it can be done in different ways. Either you do the interview in a one-to-one mode, that is one. Otherwise, you select a couple of students from the target population, maybe 4 to 5, and you will conduct the interview, which is going to be called like the focus group discussion. The other mode is going to be over you telephonically interview them. So this is the other mode of interview. Now, these are the major, like other tools are also used, but questionnaires and interviews are some of the major tools which you can use for like doing the survey research. So this is about the tools used or the instruments used in survey research. Now let us move on to the process of making the tool or instrument. Now, when you make the tool or instrument for your study, there has to have some steps which you have to follow. Now, what are those steps? Like, say for example, let me take you to like the process. First, you write the items which you want to ask. Now, when you write the item also, what you have to keep in mind is like this item has to definitely help you to address your research question or research objectives you have formulated in the very first beginning of the research work. So, write only such items which can be included either in your questionnaire or interview schedule. Number one. Number two, you also have to take care of a lot of things when you write the items in the questionnaire or interviews. Like, it has to be very clear. Don't make it very lengthy. Avoid the jargons. If you are giving questionnaire, then it can be either open-ended or close-ended. If you are giving the close-ended question, your answers should support the question. So there should not be any mismatch. So these are some of the points which you need to really keep in mind when you develop a tool or questionnaire or interview schedule. Now, once that is done, what you will do? Say for example, if you are in the beginning developing 50 questions items in your questionnaire or interview schedule, now you give a pilot testing of your questionnaire or interview schedule. Now, this would help you to take the feedback of the respondents or the samples. Once you get the feedback, then you modify your tool or instrument and you can delete, add some questions which is required for addressing your research question or research objective. So these are some of the steps. I have not gone into detail. Some of the major steps which you need to follow. Now, once you have done that, then you will, as I said, you will either mail or you will collect the data through online technologies. Now, when you collect the data, there is something like, as I said, which is going to be the fourth characteristic of survey research is that is about the response rate. Response rate, you have to at least, suppose you are sending to 500 students, at least you need to get to 50% or more of the responses. So, now, if you are not getting what we say the required number of responses, what you have to do, as you see on the slide, you can follow this three-phase survey administration procedure. Like, first give an invitation, ask them I am sending invitation, then give the survey questionnaire. Now, after 2 weeks, you give a reminder if you are not getting the required number of responses. Again, after 2 weeks, you follow up the procedure. So, this is in brief about the three-phase survey, which would help you to collect more number of responses in your data. So, I suppose we have discussed all the major characteristics in a very brief manner. Now, let us move on to the final topic of this session, which is about the different steps. Now, as you see on the slide, they can decide if a survey is best designed for your study. In second step, you identify the research question and hypothesis if it is there. Third, you identify the population, sampling, frame and samples. Then you move on to step 4, which is determine the survey design. As I said, we have 2 designs. You see which is appropriate, which would help you to address your research question. Now, once that is done, you will go for step 5, which is about developing the tool. After that, you will administer, you will give that tool to the students or your respondents or samples. Then you collect the data. Once it is done, you will move on to step 7, where we will analyze the collected data. And finally, in step 8, we will prepare the research report of the study. So these are some of the steps, as Creswell pointing out. So with this, I would like to wind up this session. In this session, we have talked about the survey designs or survey research. We started by giving the steps which we would follow in a research work. Then we moved on to discussing the definition of survey research. Then we have talked about the different types of survey designs, and we have seen again it is into 2 types, the cross-sectional and longitudinal studies. We have seen the different types of research which is falling into both survey, cross-sectional and longitudinal survey. And then we have discussed the major characteristics of a survey study, and finally we have discussed about the various steps which a researcher has to follow in a survey design or survey research. I hope you have followed and understood the various aspects and discussion points which we have discussed today. With this, I would wind up. Thank you for listening to this lecture.